Greetings, friends. Welcome to another edition of the Gospel Uncompromised. I'm Minister D. Bush from the Church of God, church that's built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. Always glad to have a chance to share the word of God with you. Now today, on this episode of the Gospel Uncompromised, we'll take a look at the latest drama that's going on in the political arena. We want to take a look at what Dr. Ben Carson is said, the absolute ridiculous, stupid statement he made as a part of a speech he was giving. He called slaves immigrants. Let's just listen at what he said here.
Land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less. But they too had a dream.
There were other.
One day their sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons, great-granddaughters might pursue prosperity and happiness in this.
He said there were immigrants in the bottom of slave ships. Now, anybody who thinks of the word immigrant would think of a voluntary trip to a country. There was nothing voluntary about slaves coming here to the United States. Those people were kidnapped, bound in chains and fetters, and packed into ships, stacked on top of each other, packed in ships like sardines. They suffered unimaginable atrocities. And for this man to sit here and say they were immigrants and that they had dreams, they didn't have any dreams. Those people were in despair. They were terrified. They were packed in those ships, weren't allowed to go to the restroom. They relieved themselves on each other. Those slave ships, if you can just imagine being packed on top of each other in excrement and urine, and you want to say that was that's immigration? You see, Ben Carson is a very, very intelligent man. He's a neurosurgeon. This is no slip of the tongue. This is a part of a greater problem. Just a few years ago here in Texas, they tried to introduce history books to, I believe it was junior high students or maybe elementary students, that said workers were brought in from Africa. Workers. No, see, this is a part of the whitewashing of American history, and that has always been the case. America tries to make her evil, her wickedness look good. And this is worse because Ben Carson should know better. In fact, he does know better. But what he has chosen to do, you see, this is why it's so important that we in the black community, we have to tell our own stories. We have to make sure we are the only community, only group of people that allow other people to tell our history. This is reprehensible what Mr. Carson did. See, I had a lot of respect for Ben Carson, and as time has gone on, I began to lose respect for him. With his run for the presidency, some of the just ridiculous things that he said during the campaign. But now I have no respect for him. Ben Carson is a disgrace to the black community. He's a disgrace to his family. His family should be ashamed of him, and he should be ashamed of himself. I would recommend that Ben Carson find a very densely wooded forest, go in it, and be ashamed to come out. Whitewashing American history. The Atlantic slave trade, the antebellum slave system, was probably the most diabolical, wicked, sadistic treatment of human beings in the history of the world. I don't know that you could find people being treated worse than slavery. And for him to just kind of just gloss over that, to say that it was immigration, are you kidding me? That's no different than saying a rape victim, well, somebody who was brutally and savagely raped, well, they just had intercourse. That's that's essentially what he's saying. They just had intercourse. Ben Carson, and this is the temptation that you have to fight when you quote unquote make it. Ben Carson's occupation, his education and his occupation has afforded him the opportunity to live life at a very high standard, very high level. And unfortunately, he's been in that on the other side of the track, so to speak, for so long. He's been amongst white conservative America for so long that he's taken on their narrative. See, this type of whitewashing is what white America has tried to do. They just gloss over slavery, downplay the horrific, wicked sadisticness of slavery. And yet at the same time, they amplify human rights violations and atrocities of other countries. The Jewish Holocaust. That is deemed, when Hitler attempted to exterminate the Jewish people, well, that is seen as barbaric, horrific. But I submit to you that the Atlantic slave trade and the antebellum slave system that was operating right here in these United States was worse, and significantly worse, than the Jewish Holocaust that occurred during World War II. The slave systems, the slave trade, the slave system was worse. But we don't like to say that. You know why? We don't like, because it happened here, right here in the United States of America. Slave quarters were nothing more than concentration camps. That's all they were. Ben Carson said they worked longer for less. No, Mr. Carson, they worked for nothing. They worked for nothing. They worked hard. They worked hard because perhaps if I work harder, maybe master won't beat me so. Maybe it won't beat the flesh off my bones. How can this man make such a stupid statement? That right there qualifies as perhaps the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Absolutely ridiculous. It's all a part of, you see, we want to whitewash history. We want to go back and just gloss over the atrocities that were committed right here in these United States of America by people who we were taught to revere. George Washington, one of the founding fathers, and George Washington was a slave owner. George Washington was a wicked, evil man. But we were taught to revere him. Man owned, I think around 300, he owned over 300 slaves. Human beings. Yes, he owned human beings. Thomas Jefferson, he's revered. He's another revered figure. He's on Mount Rushmore. Slave owner. Thomas Jefferson had black children. Yes, he raped one of his slaves. And I think it is 5 black children. The half hasn't been told of the wickedness. There's just the diabolicalness of slavery. The half haven't been told. They would take slaves and just perform crude experiments on them and just leave them to suffer. A slave owner could just go down to the slave shacks, to the shanties, and pick any female slave he desired and have his way with her. And the effects of slavery is we still suffer from those effects even today. You don't oppress a people. You don't denigrate a people for hundreds of years and think that it'll go away in just, overnight. No. And it is this type of foolishness that perpetuates it. Yeah, see, Ben Carson, he was a brilliant man, very intelligent, and he worked hard. He came from the hood. He talks about, which was one of the reasons why I had respect for him, because he talked about growing up poor, growing up on being in welfare and that sort of thing. This is a classic case of when you get on the other side of the tracks, you forget everything that was on the other, when you were on the other side, on this side of the tracks. You forget everything. People like Stacey Dash and O.J. Simpson. It's really sad when there are those of us who make it to affluence. We actually think the other side, we think that they embrace and accept us, but they don't. They don't. This is an old tactic that was around in slavery. In slavery, this comes from slavery. Willie Lynch, and I would recommend those of you out there actually Google Willie Lynch. And he was he put forth there's some documents known as the Willie Lynch letters to show how you can continue slavery. And this was one of the things that he said: if you ever get a slave loyal to you, he will fight other slaves in defense of you. And see, Ben Carson made it to be a prominent neurosurgeon, and he rubbed elbows with conservative white America for so long that he has even adopted their whitewashing posture. How pathetic. Once again, how stupid. Ben Carson, that has to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say. Just, it's ridiculous. The only black member of Donald Trump's cabinet, and this is the type of nonsense he's spewing. Now in the last couple day or so, he's tried to walk it back, but you know what? That's like a bell. You can't unring a bell. And you're far too intelligent. You of all people should know. You think before you speak. But see, you've been in lily white conservative America for so long till you actually think these people embrace and accept you. And that's a part of our problem. Once you get over there, don't forget who you are. There were other immigrants in the bottom of slave ships who worked harder and longer for less. How sad and stupid. Wow. Can you believe that? No, Mr. Carson, they worked for nothing. They were savagely beaten and maimed. They were brutally raped, Mr. Carson. They weren't immigrants. They were bought and sold like cattle and sheep. Human beings, your forefathers. You see the self-hate that they teach us? That's all a part of self-hate. Ben Carson has a problem with it. He doesn't like himself. So you can't like yourself if you get up and say foolishness like that. And this is why we as Black America, we have got to start. We make sure you teach your children at home, because what they're getting at school is watered down, is whitewashed. You teach your children at home so they can know the truth about where they come from. So they don't have to be indoctrinated with foolishness from Ben Carson. And I'll say it again. What Ben Carson said has to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say. And I'm out of here.